Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News, coming to you again from our digital desk. We're going to have a conversation about bringing back executions for death row inmates in the state of Ohio. Yesterday, Ohio Attorney General Yost released his 2024 capital crime report, and with it, he renewed his frustration at the state. The last time we have executed any death row inmate in the state of Ohio was back in 2018. Since then, there's been controversy and a shortage of the chemicals for lethal injection. There are a couple of states, Alabama and Georgia, who have moved to a new type of execution using nitrogen. They have already carried out executions doing that. So the Attorney General Yost is saying either we need to get the chemicals back here in the state of Ohio, or the legislature, which there is a bill to consider the nitrogen way as a use of execution. We're going to hear from the Ohio Attorney General Yost. We didn't get to interview Yost. They put out a couple of quotes, a couple of clips from the AG's office on this topic. And then, of course, we'll have the other side of this from Ohioans to Stop Executions. We'll hear from one of their representatives. But first, Yost's comments from yesterday.
The only thing that has changed in Ohio's capital punishment last year is that the killers got a year older and their victims are still dead. That needs to change. You know, I was a Delaware County prosecutor. I've got somebody on death row. That case was back in 2003. Man killed his wife, and the guy that he brought in to help kill his wife, he killed him too. And two prior wives, worst of the worst. He's on death row. He deserves a sentence. He's not getting it. And I'll always remember looking into the eyes of those jurors who didn't ask for this. They didn't sign up for police work or to be in court or anything else. And I looked at them, the 12 people, and I said, this person deserves to die, and I'm going to ask you to make it happen. To the families who've lost loved ones, my heart goes out to them. They've carried this burden all these years, decades, waiting for what was promised to actually happen, some modicum of justice. Can't bring their loved one back, but it's the right thing to do. It was what was promised. It was signed off by the jury, by the judge, by the appeals court, by the Supreme Court, by federal courts for on and on and on. We've had due process until it's overdue. We're not going to give up until we have justice.
And like many controversial issues, whether it's abortion, whether it's capital punishment and executions, there are two sides to every story. Everybody has basically already picked where they stand on the issue of execution. So let's hear from the other side. We're going to welcome in Kevin Werner. He is with Ohioans to Stop Executions. Mr. Werner, how are you today?
I'm well, thank you very much.
Hey, thanks for joining us. You just heard Ohio Attorney General Yost, his renewed push to bring back executions. Give us just your initial reaction to hearing that from Yost yesterday, and of course, where you stand.
Yeah. Well, I give the Attorney General a lot of credit for being honest about the status of the death penalty. The report that his office just released outlines decades of dysfunction, endless delays, wrongful convictions, and mounting costs. So I give him credit for honestly and accurately characterizing the state of Ohio's death penalty. Where we differ is what is the next step? What is the solution? The Attorney General appears to have the view that we should go ahead and just change the method of executions in the state in order to get the system back on track. However, our view is this is a system that over 43 years has demonstrated time and again it is broken, it is impossible to administer fairly, accurately, and to do so in any way that could be cost effective. So our solution is it's time to formally walk away from the death penalty. It's time to end it. It's failed public policy. And that's the logical conclusion that we and lots of others, including a lot of conservatives across the state, have drawn that same conclusion.
I'm going to just play the role of devil's advocate. You have 116 inmates currently sitting on death row here in Ohio. They've gone to court. They've sat in front of a jury. A jury found their crimes so egregious. Obviously, in most cases, if not all, they were horrible murders. And the jury said, as you heard from Dave Yost, looking at a jury, they deserve to die. You're saying let's walk away from this altogether. Do those 116 people just get to wipe their hands clean and say, okay, I'll just spend the rest of my life in prison?
Certainly not. And what's important to understand is we can have and do have accountability for people who commit those kinds of acts. When you look at the numbers and when you really dig into what the system is, we've sought something like 3,200 death sentences in the state of Ohio. Those are the instances where prosecutors have said, this is the worst of the worst crime, so I'm going to seek the death penalty. And in about 4% of the time, they're actually successful. It has nothing to do with the crime. It has nothing to do with what occurred. It has to do with the county. It has to do with the victims. What is the race of the victim? And most importantly, it has to do with that prosecutor's discretion. So worst of the worst is not a concept that lands well with victim family members, because for all of those survivors whose the murderer of their loved one did not get the death penalty, we've created two systems where effectively you have some victim family members are promised we're going to have justice when we execute this person, and others are sort of left wondering, well, why wasn't the homicide of my loved one good enough? And the fact of the matter is that it is extremely unfair, and it only harms victim family members. That's why we think that it's time to repeal the death penalty. It has nothing to do with being soft on crime or thinking that, somehow people who committed these heinous acts are victims themselves. That's not the case. This is about, do we want to continue to traumatize victim family members decade after decade after decade because these death penalty cases stay in the limelight? So this is really about what is serving the needs of victim family members, not holding out this false promise that is never going to occur.
The Attorney General, as you said, some of these cases are in decades and decades. They pointed a case out of Trumbull County. The man was sentenced 40 years ago to death. This was a despicable crime. A 12-year-old boy was raped, mutilated, and murdered by that man. And he has just been granted his 25th appeal by the Federal Court of Appeals. That's how long this goes on because of the appeal process. So from the standpoint of Ohioans to stop executions, what is the answer? If you're taking executions off the table, what is the answer?
Yeah, I think it's important let's talk about that case in particular. Mr. Hill, I think Danny Lee Hill is often cited by the Trumbull County prosecutor, often cited by the Ohio Attorney General in terms of the duration that this individual has been on death row. While this is not to excuse any of the acts that this person committed, he was removed from death row due to intellectual disability. The U.S. Supreme Court said we do not execute individuals who have intellectual disability. After he was taken off of death row, the Trumbull County prosecutor and the Ohio Attorney General fought to put him back on death row in a way that, few people really understand. It's hard to understand why Mr. Hill, when individuals complain about how long he's been on death row, some of that is the state's own doing. It's the county prosecutor's own doing. But really for us, again, this is the example of what this system does to victim family members. The family of Raymond Fife has been waiting for 40 plus years. And the fact of the matter is that Mr. Hill is far more likely to die of natural causes than to ever be executed, even though we have paid 10, 15 times the expense to put him on death row, to put him back on death row, to put him on death row a third time. You have to wonder, what is the benefit to the victim's family in this particular case. And so again, there's not a lot of sympathy for individuals who commit the kinds of offenses that Mr. Hill did, but there is sympathy for the family that's left in the wake of that violence. So how do we help them move forward? And I would argue that 40 years of back and forth appeals up and down the courts, in and out, 1 minute you have a death sentence, 1 minute you don't. I would argue that that re-traumatizes them unnecessarily again and again.
We're speaking with Kevin Werner. He is with Ohioans to Stop Executions. And I want to try and encapsulate what you're saying. The cruel and unusual punishment argument, you're not saying that putting an inmate to death is cruel and unusual. What you're saying is that by making a family wait 40 years, that's the cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah, there's an element of the death penalty system that harms victim family members in ways that those individuals just really don't need and don't want. It's impossible to say how a case is going to play out, but I bet if you went back in time and you asked that family, would you like to go through the next 45 years with this back and forth, or would you like to close the book on this today? Lock them up, throw away the key. My guess is that they don't want any more attention than what they have already received as a result. So the system does nothing but harm people.
So you said lock them up and throw away the key. Is that the stance of Ohioans against Ohioans to Stop Execution? That is your answer to this. Life in prison, no chance for parole.
Virtually any other sentencing option, whether that's 30 years to life, 35 years to life, 25 years to life, life without parole, whatever the jury and the judge sort of decide, is far more effective than continuing to waste dollars on chasing death sentences that will just never occur. So we don't have a position on what the sentencing judges should be doing. That's for them to decide. We're just saying that the death penalty doesn't work. It doesn't deter crime. It costs too much. It executes innocent people, and it harms victim family members. So that's not a public policy that the state of Ohio should continue.
Excellent. Mr. Werner, we certainly appreciate your time and your counterbalance to this ongoing debate, which will continue to be ongoing in the future. Thank you so much for the time, and good luck with Ohioans to Stop Executions.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care. That's going to wrap up really this point and counterpoint discussion on the issue. Always want to be fair and balanced here. First, fair everywhere. That's what we are here at Channel 19. So we bring you both sides of this controversial argument. If we have any other breaking news, it'll be right here on our digital platforms. There is some severe weather in the area right now, so make sure you tune in to Cleveland 19 when we start 3.5 hours of news and first alert weather starting at 3 o'clock on Channel 19. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News. Have a great afternoon.
19 News is everywhere. Download our CTV apps and follow us on social media.